Hello everybody, and welcome to the new series, Ducky Reads, here on Ducky Bubbles. Today we will be playing Fred's Back on the Commodore 64, while reading Every Man His Own Physician, being a complete collection of efficacious and approved remedies for every disease incident to the human body, by John Theobald in 1764. This medical advice is very old, and I do not recommend taking any of this. We will be reading this in parts, and we will just see how long we go. For aches and pains, keep in mind, many of these words are before my time, and this writing is very difficult, so I will be making various errors. Aches and pains, rub a little opaledic upon the part affected 2 or 3 times a day, and wear a flannel upon it. Always wear a flannel upon your aches and pains. For after pains, take a furble of spermaceti, 5 grains of volatile salt of hartshorn, 5 drops of balsam of Peru, and half a drachm of Venice treacle. Mix them into a bolus with as much syrup of white poppies as is sufficient to make a bolus, to be repeated every 6 hours till the pains abate. Cover the woman up warm and let her drink plentifully of codal. For ague or intermittent fever, a violent headache, a weariness of the limbs, a pain of the loins, a coldness of the external parts, a shivering and shaking, sometimes so much as to make the very bed shake under them, a great thirst and burning heat, and frequent inclination to vomit. Afterwards, the symptoms begin to abate. The skin becomes moist, the urine is of a flame color, but without sentiment, and a sweat breaking out terminates the fit. Method of the cure. First, vomit the sick person vomit the whole sick person by giving half a drachm of the powder of ichapec to work it off with chamomile tea, and let the sick person, do not lick the sick person, and let the sick person take the following powder. Of this, a best Peruvian bark powder, 1 ounce of Virginia snake root, and salt of wormwood, each 1 drachm. Mix these well together and divide them into 8 doses, 1 paper to be taken every 2 hours, and a glass of red wine or any other liquid. I'm glad that was specified. This is a certain and infallible cure, but care must be taken to administer it only in the intervals of the fits, but it must be repeated for 2 or 3 days, about 10 days after the first cure, or else the disorder will frequently return. In obstinate cases, removing into a drier air has been found of great advice. For St. Anthony's fire. This disease affects every part of the body, but most frequently the face, and it happens all times of the year. But whatever part is affected, a chillness and shivering generally attend the disorder, with great thirst, restlessness, and other bites of a fever. The face swells of a sudden with a great pain and redness. An abundance of small pimples appear, which often rile up into small blisters and spread over the forehead, and the eyes being quite colored by the largeness of the swelling. This, in the country, is usually called a blast. These S's very much look like F's in these old style of writing. Method of cure. Let a sick person loose 8 or 10 ounces of blood, and repeat the bleeding more than once. If the symptoms run high, and apply it to the part of a poultice of white bread and milk, with a little hog's lard in it. Let the poultice be charged twice in a day, and every other morning the following purge, till the disorder is cured. Viz. Globber's salt in 1 ounce, mana half an ounce. Mix and dissolve it in warm water for 1 dose. The diet in this disease must be very low, chiefly water gruel or at most weak broth. All strong liquors must be avoided as poison. Apoplexy. The immediate preceding signs are trembling, flagging, a giddiness in the head, a dimness of sight, sleepiness, loss of memory, noise in the ears, and a deep, laborious breathing. The disease itself is a total deprivation of sense and motion, except that of respiration, which is performed with difficulty, and snoring. It usually ends in a paralytic disorder. It is seldom curable, but always leaves behind it a great defect of memory, judgment, and motion. Method of cure. Cupping in the nape and sides of the neck is always useful, provided the scarifications are deep enough to give a free passage to the blood. Stimulating clisters and warm purges are also of service, as is also the following electory. Take half an ounce of powdered health valerian and 1 ounce of half of conservants of orange peel and mix them together. The dose is the quantity of nutmeg in every 4 hours. Applying a strong blister to the back. The diet must be very sparing. Mead, Sydenham, and Heister. Oh, those were probably the people who wrote those. Appetite. Want of. Drink chamomile tea every day, an hour before dinner. Or take 10 drops of acid elixir of vitriol in a glass of water every 2 hours before dinner. About 2 hours after every dinner or every day. A gentle puke should precede the use of these remedies, for which purpose nothing is presentable via picana. Ooh, that's a big word. A surple of which is sufficient for a dose, and should be worked off with weak chamomile tea. Looks like chamomile tea fixes everything. Asthma, or phthisic. That's a new one. I cannot pronounce that word. An obstructed and very laborious breathing, attended with an unspeakable anxiety and a straightness about the breast. Method of cure. Dissolve 2 drachms of gum ammonium in half a pint of pennyroyal water and add an ounce of oxymel of squills. 3 large spoonfuls of this mixture may be taken frequently, or from 20 to 30 drops of paregoric elixir may be taken in pennyroyal water 2 or 3 times a day. Bleeding is generally proper, as is a large blister applied to the back, and gentle vomits. A diet should be slender. Malt liquors must be avoided, being very pernicious. Oh my. Baldness. Rub the part frequently with an onion until it looks red. Do not rub yourself with an onion until you are red. Bleeding at the nose. Apply to the back part and sides of the neck a linen cloth dipped in cold water, in which salt prunella has been dissolved. In very obstinate cases, bleeding in the foot is useful. Do not slice your foot open if your nose is bleeding. Spitting of blood. Take red rose leaves, dried, half an ounce, 20 drops of vitriol, 1 ounce, and a half of refined sugar, and pour 2 pints in a half of boiling water, and these ingredients in an earthen vessel. Let it stand to be cold, and take half a quarter of a pint frequently. In this disorder, frequent bleeding in small quantities is proper, not exceeding 4 at the most, 6 ounces at each time, according to the strength of the sick person. It's probably best never to bleed yourself. That is a bad idea. Once again, I must say, do not take any of these seriously. They are very old. See a doctor if you are sick. Bloody flux. Signs of. Generally begins with a coldness and shivering, succeeded by a quick pulse and intense thirst. The stools are greasy and sometimes frothy, mixed with blood and filaments intermixed, which have the appearance of melted suet and are attended with intolerable griping and a pain deficient as it were the bowels. Whew, bad times. Method of cure. Bleed, thirst, then give the following vomit. Half a drachm of powder of ipecacuanha, work off with chamomile tea, repeat this vomit every other day for 3 or 4 times. On the intermediate days between each vomit, let the sick person take a large spoonful of the following mucilage? Ooh, that's a word. Warm and every hour. Dissolve half an ounce of gum arabic and half an ounce of gum tragacanth in a pint of barley water over a gentle fire. Clysters made of fat mutton broth are great service for the sick person and must abstain from malt and spirituous liquors. Very bad times. Boils. Apply a plaster of diaclon with the gums once every day until they are cured. Internal bruises. Didn't know there was internal bruises. Take a large spoonful of cold drawn linseed oil 2 or 3 times a day. The patient must also be blooded to the quantity of 8 to 10 ounces. So much bloodletting. Too much bloodletting. Bruises. External. Bathe the part with little spirits of wine and camphor. Camphor? Which in flight cases will affect the cure. But if that fails, it will be necessary to apply a poultice of stale beer grounds and oatmeal with a little hog's lard, which must be applied fresh every day until the bruise is entirely cured. Whew! That sounds like a very bad time. Burns and scalds. Take may butter, unsalted, and white wax of each 6 ounces, oil of olives, half a pint, lapis calaminaris, 1 ounce and a half, melt the wax and butter with the oil, and stir into the lapis calaminaris finely powdered till it is too hard to let it settle. This is an excellent ointment for the above purposes, and is to be applied once a day, spread on a fine linen rag. Oh dear. Cancer. Begins at first with a small tumor about the size of a nut, which does not change the color of the skin, and sometimes remains for several years without increasing. But as soon as the virulent humor becomes more active, the small hard swelling becomes all of a sudden a large, round, livid, unequal tumor and is attended with an intense shooting pain. At length, it breaks and turns into a sharp, stinking fannies. Stinking fannies. I'm sure I'm reading that wrong. Which, eating away at the found parts, the lips of the wound become offensive to the sight, and the patient, being worn out with intolerable pain, at last ensues death. This disorder may infect any part of the body, but is most frequently in the breasts, the armpits, behind the ears, the lips, the nose, and the private parts. Method of cure. Boil 1/4 pound of guasium shavings in 6 pints of water till it comes 4 pints. Drink a pint of this concoction twice a day, milk warm. Decoction. External applications most proper are poultice of white bread and milk, and formations of milk and water, and the cancer should be defended from the cold air by a piece of fine linen, on which a little of the spermaceti ointment, the composition of which you will see in the appendix, is spread, and should be renewed 2 or 3 times a day. Colic. Take 2 ounces of Daffy's elixir, and repeat it on occasion may require, or half a drachm of powder of rhubarb, toasted a little before the fire. Consumption. A dry cough, disposition to vomit after eating, an uneasy straightness of the breast, spitting of blood, a quickness of the pulse after meals, and flushing of the cheeks. As the disease advances, the matter brought up by the cough, if spit into the fire, yields an offensive smell. Who is testing this? If into a glass of water, it sinks the bottom, produce night sweats, looseness, and wasting of the whole body. Whew! Tricky to read. Method of cure. A milk diet. Riding on the horseback, a country air, and bleeding frequently in small quantities, at each time taking away not more than 6 ounces of blood, are the most efficacious remedies in this distemper. Snails boiled in milk have sometimes been of service, as is also the Peruvian bark, when it does not occasion a purging. Issues or setons made in the side of the parts most affected are also proper. I see that we are upon 16 minutes or so, so let's just take a break right there. I hope you enjoyed this reading, and we shall continue another time if you guys enjoy this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye now.